What's up, everybody? Alex from Columbus here. Welcome back to another video, and welcome to a little bit of a, I don't know, tribute, catalog overview, reflection, what have you. I probably shouldn't have said tribute off the bat because I don't really do tribute videos when somebody passes. But for this one, I was sitting here thinking, what a silver lining, right? Like, what an opportunity to look back at sort of a celebration of output from one of the greatest musicians ever, especially in the jazz genre. So we're here because at the time of recording this, we got the news that the great jazz drummer, but that's not all he did, but mostly known for being a jazz drummer, Jack DeJohnette, has passed away. I started thinking, at this point in our lives, when you're into the type of music that that I'm into, which is pretty much most of what I listen to is like pre-1980. Every day it feels like somebody else is passing away, and I think for me specifically in the jazz genre, I think it's a little bit different for me because so many of these jazz giants feels like an entire multiple lifetimes ago, right? It's like when you think about when we lost, people like Coltrane way back in the 60s, or Miles Davis or whatever in the early 90s. Like, so many of these people, it felt like we lost literal lifetimes ago, and what they went through and their experiences, it feels like a completely different world. And so when there are still these giants of jazz that are still around today, it's wild, right? Like, I'm not trying to speak anything into existence, but like Ron Carter is still with us, and that's amazing. And Jack was one of those people, that's kind of played with everybody, and his stamp on music is just so important. So the whole point of this video is not a tribute per se. I'm not so emotionally overtaken with grief that I feel like I need to get on camera and talk to people about it per se, but just thinking jazz for me has been something that doing YouTube and doing vinyl community stuff is what got me into jazz, and what got me into collecting and digging and doing all those different things. And so I thought for a second, I said, dang, I probably got a lot of records with Jack on there, and I did. So the whole point of this video is I'm just going to show a bunch of records that Jack played on. I got about 25 or so records that he played on. And the other side of this too is I don't do a ton of jazz videos. I don't know how many people that watch me are into jazz, but to me, this is an opportunity to show a lot of jazz stuff that I might not show, especially all in one video. So, if you're interested in jazz, stick around, check it out. If you're not, that's fine too. But just thanks for sticking around, and thanks for your grace with this, because I'm not an expert. I've been into jazz for a few years, and I just want to show some records that I fucking love that Jack played on, and I think that's what it's all about, right? So the only Jack DeJohnette solo record I have is this one, Sorcery. And this came out on Prestige Records in 1974. And a little bit out there. This is a little bit of this is not like an introduction into jazz, let's put it that way. Really cool cover that I would show better, that's with the hype and the shrink on it doesn't come through. This was part of the Jazz Dispensary reissue series, so pretty difficult to find originals of this. Again, this was like the only reissue they did of it, but a pretty out there record, but absolutely fantastic. That's got Benny Maupin on there, who, gosh, at that time was either coming from or still part of sort of what Herbie was doing with the Headhunters type stuff. The great John Abercrombie on guitar, and of course Jack on drums, and a couple of other players. So this is the only Jack solo record I have, but I know there's a ton, especially on ECM, that I'm kind of like, damn, I need to go get, because he had a huge ECM presence. One of the first records that I had that he was a part on, going back to the Blue Note, and one of my favorite saxophone players, this is Jackie McLean with Demon's Dance. Love that cover too. This, of course, is part of the Blue Note Tone Poet series. This originally came out in 1967, I believe, 67 or 68. It has, of course, Jackie McLean on it, Jack DeJohnette, Woody Shaw, the fabulous Woody Shaw, Lamont Johnson, and Scott Holt on here. Really fantastic. At this point, some of Jackie McLean's stuff is kind of out there, but not too out there. I don't think this is as out there as Sorcery is by any means, but you know, you kind of, I don't want to say hit or miss. They're all hits. It depends what you're into, but it stretches the limits a little bit here, kind of moving into that post-bop era. Kind of forgot that he was part of this trio. This might surprise some people, but Bill Evans at the Montreux Jazz Festival, 1968. He was on here as a trio with who was playing bass on here? Eddie Gomez was playing bass on here. So yeah, for those Bill Evans fans, spectacular stuff. This was part of the Analog Productions reissue here. So obviously beautiful piano trio music here. If you know Bill Evans, you know what you're getting into. This was a really cool find. I remember finding this at Homer's, I believe, in Omaha, Nebraska. And this is Miroslav Vitus or V2 with Mountain in the Clouds. This was on Atlantic Records, 1968 or 69, I believe this came out. I think recorded then, wasn't released until maybe the early 70s. But an incredible bassist was Miroslav. He was the first bassist in Weather Report. And of course, I mean, this lineup was insane, right? John McLaughlin, Joe Henderson, Herbie Hancock, Jack DeJohnette, and Joe Chambers. What a freaking lineup that is. And a really cool find from here. So yeah, great stuff on Atlantic that Jack is on. So now we're entering a huge part of his career, which there could have been a whole video about this, and that was playing with Miles Davis. So Quintet ended, we started going into like In the Silent Way, Bitches Brew type stuff. He really started bringing out a lot of different musicians, and sort of became more of like a collective at that point, right? He almost didn't have like the stable band anymore, the stable quintet, but more a collective, a lot of people playing on a lot of different things. But of course, you know, classic, you know, Jack is all over Bitches Brew, of course. This was a Record Store Day release from several years ago. It was some Bitches Brew outtakes. What was this called? Double Image, Rare Miles from the complete Bitches Brew sessions. Of course, all over that. Of course, now you're getting into some pretty, you know, if you follow Miles, right? Like after you get to like Bitches Brew and on, like there's a few years there, like this stuff's out there. You know, it's like they call it funky, and you're like, here's the thing, it is, but if you're coming from listening to like the Ohio Players, this doesn't feel funky. This feels a little bit more out there. But of course, Miles Davis at Fillmore, featuring Jack DeJohnette. Here's a classic, Miles Davis Live Evil. This was a Record Store Day release, 50th anniversary from several years ago. This came out in 1971. Of course, the great Jack Johnson, or tribute to Jack Johnson. Outstanding stuff. This was kind of my intro, and a lot of people's intro into Miles, especially that fusion era, right? If you like, you know, Jack Johnson kind of is like a rock record with some, you know, jazz backing, but amazing stuff. This was another Record Store Day release, Champions. It was some outtakes. They're kind of doing this where they're like releasing these outtakes. I'll show it on the next one here on Record Store Day of a lot of these sessions. So Jack was all over playing on Jack Johnson. Of course, here we go on the classic On the Corner. What a wild record this is. Outstanding. Was the 72, 73, 72. And similar, I always pick up the Record Store Day stuff. On the Corner, outtakes, other sessions. It's on a kind of a cool blue. This is also part of that Miles time in his career where things were getting released as sort of compilations, but not really. But this was a huge one that came out in 74, but it's from, I think, the Jack Johnson type eras. But it's big fun. If you see this record, pick up this record. Outstanding. Big fun. Again, came out in 74, but it's from those Jack Johnson sessions. Then he starts kind of hanging out in Milestone era places. So, well, we'll get to the time thing here, but I'm kind of going in a little bit of sections here. I want to show these two incredible records. These are not cheap records as originals, but Jazz Dispensary has reissued both of them. You can get them both for $25. Audiophile quality, absolutely amazing, but they are a bit out there. That's the thing, because at Joe Henderson at this point, he is squonking in a really bitchin' way, and I love it. But the two that are worth it, these were released on Milestone Records originally, is Power to the People. This one's got Herbie Hancock, Jack DeJohnette, Ron Carter, Mike Lawrence. And then this one, The Elements, that Joe Henderson did with Alice Coltrane. You also have, who else is on here? Was Charlie Hayden on here? Charlie Hayden's on here. And then Jack DeJohnette. So both of these are both Jazz Dispensary audiophile reissues. Absolutely incredible. 25, 30 bucks, whatever they are, but insanely good, especially because you're not going to be able to get kind of originals. Now, around the same time here, Jack was huge into both ECM, which I thought I would be pulling more ECM records, but I'm really not. It kind of inspires me. I gotta go out and buy some more ECM, especially ones that Jack's on, but also CTI. Now, I have a video coming up about CTI, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, but I wanted to walk through some of these great CTI records that he's on that are fantastic. Here's one of my favorites, and again, this is an $8, $10 record that absolutely smokes, but it's Freddie Hubbard and Stanley Turrentine in concert with Ron Carter, Herbie Hancock, Eric Gale, and Jack DeJohnette. Outstanding. This is CTI 6044. I think this came out in 73 or 74, something like that. There's a part 2 of this as well that I don't have, but I would like to have, but this is absolutely burning. Not quite burning, but still fascinating. I think really showcases his expertise and his diversity in his playing and in his drumming. Hubert Law's The Rite of Spring. This is one of the earliest CTIs. This was CTI 6012. This is more what you would call like a third stream, if you will. It's almost more kind of classical chamber music. This is not necessarily a formal jazz record, although it does comprise a bunch of jazz musicians. Hubert Law's classic flautist, that really helped define the CTI sound, but Jack DeJohnette is on this record. Again, when I'm showing these CTI records, most of these are so cheap. They're $5, $10, $12 hollers. Here's one, which is my favorite Benson release that I've heard so far in CTI. This is Body Talk, CTI 6033. If you don't know about George Benson on CTI, check it out. It is some funky playing, amazing stuff. Don't let the schmaltzy stuff later turn you off. It's amazing. Here's one of the more sort of pricey-ish CTI records, and that's Joe Farrell with Moon Germs. This came out in 73 with Herbie Hancock, Stan Clark, and Jack DeJohnette. CTI 6023. This is a incredible record. Joe Farrell's outstanding. He's playing both sax and flute. Great cover, too. Amazing. Of course, he played a lot with Freddie Hubbard. I need Straight Life. I don't have Straight Life. I need Straight Life. So if you're watching, you got Straight Life, send me that shit. Polar AC, Freddie Hubbard. This is kind of an interesting record because it's sort of, I guess, technically a comp, but I think a lot of people will just kind of refer to it as one of Freddie's outputs, pieces of output on CTI. Of course, you got Ron Carter, you got Jack, you got Billy Cobham on here too, Lenny White, George Benson, again, because it's a comp, you got everybody playing everything. But for some great Freddie Hubbard music of the 70s, you know, if you don't want to pay an arm and a leg for Blue Note, this is some great stuff. This is a $10 record, if that. Here was a fun one. This is one of the records that got me into jazz or got me into fusion, but it's Illuminations from Alice Coltrane and Carlos Santana. This came out in 1974. But Jack's drumming all over this, again, kind of displaying his diversity, his approach to different types of music. Some stuff that's really in the pocket, some stuff that's more out there. He was on the trio stuff. Again, this is a $5, $10 record. Outstanding. Kind of circling back to Weather Report mode. He is on this Joe Zawinul. If you don't know, Joe Zawinul was kind of the creative force behind Weather Report. For better and worse, we'll say. But this is Concerto Retitled. This came out in 1976 on Atlantic. But Jack DeJohnette is all over this record. It's a pretty cheap record too, but really good. We'll go back to Milestone here for this record. A little bit latter era McCoy Tyner stuff. McCoy Tyner was a longtime piano player in John Coltrane's quartet. But here you have Inner Voices. This has got Ron Carter, Jack DeJohnette on here. You got Earl Klug. Really a solid record for kind of that later, you know, for something that came out in 1977. Not an expensive record. I think I picked this up for maybe $5. Really good stuff. And last, this was the big ECM one that I was missing, and I can't believe I forgot how much I love this record. I'm a huge fan of Pat Metheny. And this is such a beautiful record. 80, 81. Charlie Hayden, Jack DeJohnette, Dewey Redman, Michael Brecker. Absolutely fabulous stuff. So yeah, there you go. Again, not a whole lot of direction here. I just wanted to show the records that he's on. Yeah, you know, it's something I think that we as music fans deal with every day, especially those who are into more of the old school stuff. Is just, you know, last week it was Ace Frehley, and this week it's Jack DeJohnette, and sadly, who knows who it's going to be next week. Could be any of us. Anyway, thanks for putting up with this. Thanks for watching. For those who are into jazz or Jack DeJohnette stuff, let me know what you think with the comments and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, just appreciate you all watching. Thanks so much, and we'll see you on the next one.